Εμείς να σας ευχαριστήσουμε πολύ και όντως ήμασταν και εμείς εκεί και το θυμόμαστε με πολύ συγκίνηση, όπως όλοι οι Έλληνες. Ευχαριστούμε πολύ και ευχαριστούμε και τον κύριο Τσίμα. And now we proceed with the agenda of the opening session, and I now kindly call the Secretary General of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Mr. Mathias Cormann, to come on stage for his remarks. Mr. Cormann, please.
Well, thank you very much from the great inspiration back to the great transition. And, Simeon Tsomokos, founder and president of the Delphi Economic Forum, Excellencies, distinguished guests, friends all, thank you for the very warm welcome back to Delphi, and a particular thank you to all those of you who are staying on to listen to the next bracket of speeches as part of this marathon opening session of this year's Delphi Economic Forum. This forum is now in its 9th edition, and it continues to be such a valuable opportunity both to consider the policy implications flowing from recent economic and geopolitical developments, but more importantly, the longer-term outlook, and indeed the continuing structural transformations across our economies and societies, or indeed the great transition. Going forward, we need to find the best possible answers to a number of key questions. We heard from the President of Ukraine, President Zelensky. Key question: how best to restore peace and stability by resolving conflicts around the world, in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and in trouble spots all around the world. In the meantime, how can we best facilitate better international cooperation to tackle the shared global challenges in front of us at a time of heightened geopolitical tensions and those conflicts? How can we best drive stronger, more resilient, sustainable and inclusive growth, boosting opportunities for people around the world to improve their living standards? How can we best ensure that the benefits of the sustainable expansion of global trade are not only maintained but further developed, and indeed can continue to flow on the foundation of well-functioning global markets, and with those benefits more fairly and appropriately shared? How can we best ensure that our global climate ambitions are matched with globally effective action and outcomes, in particular through improved global cooperation and better coordination of our efforts? How can we best seize all the benefits flowing from the digital transformation, including AI, while better managing some of the evolving downside risks and disruptions? And how do we need to adjust our fiscal, education, skills, migration, pension and social support policies to better respond to the economic, social and fiscal implications of population aging? And more generally, how do we best go about creating the necessary fiscal space to deal with growing structural spending pressures across all these areas, and to ensure the necessary resilience to deal with any future shocks? These are just some of the many issues in front of us in the context of this great transition that at this forum we will be talking about over the next few days. As we're meeting here at the Delphi Economic Forum today, the good news is that the global economy continues to show great resilience. Despite everything that has been going on in recent years, the global economy continues to grow. Unemployment remains low, while inflation is now declining. Global trade, while still comparatively weak, is showing signs of improvement, with an upturn in semiconductor production in Asia and stronger global car sales bolstering merchandise trade, while services trade continues to benefit from the post-pandemic recovery of international tourism. Global financial conditions have begun to ease, though appropriately remain relatively restrictive almost everywhere. According to our latest projections, we expect global GDP to grow by 2.9% this year and 3% next year. By the end of 2025, we expect inflation to be back to central bank targets in most G20 economies, with Argentina and Turkey the two exceptions. Incidentally, Since 2021, on the back of important economic reforms delivering their dividends, the Greek economy has continued to outperform the euro area as a whole. Despite the remarkable resilience in the global economy, there remains a lot of uncertainty about the outlook. In particular, as a result of geopolitical risk, but also the risk that disinflation might proceed more slowly than expected, or that past policy rate increases end up having stronger effects than anticipated. Policymakers around the world need to continue to do both, make sensible decisions to deal with all the short-term pressures while laying the policy foundations today to support long-term growth and tackle the continuing significant long-term structural reform challenges in front of us. First, global trade needs to be reinvigorated. Open international markets operating within a rules-based global trading system based on a level playing field for global trade is a key driver of growth and increases in incomes and living standards around the world. There has been a long-term slowdown in trade openness since the global financial crisis. Global value chain integration has slowed, restrictive trade policies have increased, and domestic policies are becoming more inward focused. And that is a trend that has continued in 2023. Growing geopolitical tensions and genuine national security considerations are posing new and increased challenges for globally integrated markets. That is the case even though more trade and more investment demonstrably translates into stronger growth, more jobs, higher incomes and lower costs for businesses and consumers, globally and also here in Greece. We will hear next from a leader of the Greek shipping industry. The Greek shipping industry accounts for 1/5 of total export and is dependent on open and safe maritime shipping routes. So the early resolution of conflicts and a rules-based trading system in good working order are incredibly important for this key industry for the Greek economy. So governments should strive for more resilient global value chains and measures to avoid excessive concentration of their production, supply or consumer base without eroding the benefits of globalization, without preventing the cost reductions and increases in incomes that can be achieved by lowering trade barriers and by unleashing the forces of competition, innovation, productivity growth and efficiency that more open markets deliver. Second, emissions reduction ambitions need to be matched with globally effective action and outcomes. We will not meet our shared global climate objectives by reducing emissions in one jurisdiction in ways that leads to increased emissions in other parts of the world. The OECD's Inclusive Forum on Carbon Mitigation Approaches, bringing together advanced, emerging and developing economies from around the world, is designed to help optimize the global emissions reduction impact of emissions reduction efforts around the world. And we do this by deploying our expertise on data and information sharing, evidence-based mutual learning, and best practice policy advice, and by facilitating inclusive multilateral dialogue involving advanced, emerging, and developing economies. Third, we need to improve our policies to deal with the economic, social, and fiscal implications of population aging. The composition of our workforce across the OECD continues to shift towards older workers. Back in the year 2000, across the OECD, there were 23 adults aged 65 and over for every 100 people of working age. Today, it's 34, and by 2050, it is expected to be 53 people aged 65 and over for every 100 people of working age. That is, over the next 25 years or so, the group of adults aged 65 and over across OECD countries is expected to be more than half the size of the working age population. All other things being equal and without policy change, population aging leads to lower workforce participation levels, lower growth, and hence lower incomes for governments at a time when public demand for social and healthcare services and pensions will continue to go up and up. We will need to address this challenge through a combination of measures, including by boosting workforce participation by underrepresented groups in the labour market. We need to use all the available talents across our economies by boosting workforce participation, by women as well as younger, older and migrant workers. It means reforms to support the better balancing of work and care responsibilities, to promote longer working lives, and to ensure the sustainability of the pension, healthcare and long-term care systems. International migration can also help address population ageing, but needs to be well managed and requires a commitment to effective economic and social integration. The OECD's new Centre for Population Dynamics, the Crete Centre, here in Greece, strengthens our understanding of demographic challenges, including those related to ageing and migration. And we're very much looking forward to our work with the Delphi Economic Forum on the first International Crete Conference for Dialogue on Population, which will help to deepen our understanding of the impact of ageing on public finances, the interactions between ageing, productivity and growth, and migrant entrepreneurship. Fourth, we must boost productivity growth as the key to further enhance living standards among a declining population. Especially so in Greece, which despite important progress in recent years is still about a third less productive than the average OECD economy. But productivity growth across OECD economies overall has also significantly declined over the last 20 years. Action in several areas is necessary to reverse this trend. Effective competition enforcement, reduced regulatory barriers to entry are both important to help ensure that markets are genuinely contestable by new innovative firms. Digital infrastructure, such as broadband access, needs to be enhanced to help firms reach their potential, including through fostering competition among digital service providers and streamlining administrative procedures for network deployment. Improving the quality of education and skills development will ensure that we have the human capital required to underpin productivity growth. Dynamic and open higher education systems, coupled with widespread opportunities for upskilling and reskilling, are all necessary to provide the best possible opportunity for people to participate and thrive in changing labour markets as we continue to go through this great transition. Finally, governments need to rebuild their fiscal buffers and resilience. Public debt burdens continue to rise in many countries, with debt servicing costs increasing as low-yielding debt matures and is replaced by new, higher-yielding issuance. Add to this the spending pressures related to population ageing, climate mitigation and adaptation, and defence, and it is clear that governments need to plan better on the basis of well-designed medium-term fiscal frameworks, pursue reforms to boost growth and revenues, to contain spending growth and improve the composition of spending to ensure the necessary fiscal space while ensuring public debt is on a sustainable path. These are just some of the many shared challenges that are best tackled together. At the OECD, we're committed to support policymakers around the world to develop sound and well-coordinated policy responses to each of the structural shifts in front of us, grounded in our shared values of democracy, the protection of human rights, the rule of law, and market-based economic principles. We very much look forward to continuing to work with all of you, to continue our work with the Delphi Economic Forum, to continue to support the development of better policies for better lives. As I say, thank you for having stayed for this session of speeches, and I'm looking forward to the next speakers in this session. Thank you.